April 11th, 1241. The banks of the Sajó River, Kingdom of Hungary. 100,000 Christian knights, soldiers, and camp followers stood behind the largest military coalition Europe had assembled in a generation. The morning fog still clung to the marshes. Somewhere beyond it, drums. King Béla IV of Hungary had done everything right. He had fortified his wagon camp with iron chains. He had united the bickering nobles. He had positioned his forces on the high ground beside the river crossing. His army was the finest military force in Christendom: Templar knights in gleaming mail, Hungarian horse archers, Croat infantry hardened by border wars. 100,000 souls, the largest Christian army then assembled anywhere on earth. They had no idea they were already dead. Because on the other side of that fog, 4 Mongol columns were moving, silently, precisely, like the fingers of a hand closing into a fist. Their commander, Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis himself, had already destroyed 3 kingdoms in 2 years. He had slaughtered the Polish army at Legnica just 2 days before. His general, Subutai, the greatest military mind of the medieval world, had crossed the Carpathians in winter, something no army was supposed to survive, and arrived exactly on schedule. And here was the secret. The Mongols didn't just want to win this battle. They wanted to make it impossible for Europe to ever recover from it. They had a plan so intricate, so ruthless, that it would be studied by military strategists for centuries. A plan that turned Hungary's greatest strength, its sheer size, into its most fatal weakness. Hit subscribe, this story gets wild. Now let's rewind, because you cannot understand what happened at Mohi without understanding what the Mongols had already become. By 1241, the Mongol Empire was the most terrifying military machine the world had ever produced. In a single generation, it had erased the Jin dynasty of northern China, absorbed Central Asia, and drowned the Khwarezmian Empire, an empire of 20 million people, in fire and blood. According to Persian chronicler Rashid al-Din, the Mongols killed an estimated 1 million people during the sack of Merv alone. Historians debate the exact figures, but the scale of destruction was unprecedented in the medieval world. The pyramids of skulls they left outside destroyed cities were not legendary. They were warning signs. At the head of this Western campaign was Batu Khan, the political commander, ambitious, calculating, hungry to prove himself worthy of his grandfather's legacy. But the true architect was Subutai, a man who had been planning the invasion of Europe for nearly a decade. Subutai had sent spies into Poland, Hungary, and the Holy Roman Empire years in advance. He understood the terrain. He understood politics. He knew that the Christian kingdoms of Europe hated each other almost as much as they hated him. And that hatred had made King Béla IV's situation desperate even before the Mongols arrived. When Béla offered refuge to the Cumans, a displaced Turkic people fleeing the Mongol advance, his own Hungarian nobles revolted. They suspected the Cumans of being Mongol spies. They murdered the Cuman leader in his tent. And the Cumans, furious and betrayed, rode south, out of the campaign entirely, taking 40,000 cavalry with them. 40,000 horsemen who would have made Béla's army genuinely formidable. Little did Béla know, the Mongols had engineered this. They had deliberately driven the Cumans west, knowing exactly what chaos would follow. So how did Béla plan to stop the unstoppable? The answer, he believed, lay in numbers and position, but he was asking the wrong question entirely. Here is the thing you have to understand about the Mongol way of war. They never fought the battle their enemy prepared for. Subutai's secret at Mohi was not a weapon. It was not a terrain advantage. It was something far more dangerous, a complete understanding of how Béla's mind worked. He knew the Hungarian king was a careful, defensive commander. He knew that Béla would fortify his camp, wait for the Mongols to attack, and rely on his superior numbers at close quarters. So Subutai built a trap that rewarded exactly that thinking. The Mongols arrived at the Sajó River first and seized the stone bridge. Béla's scouts reported this. Béla sent a force to retake the bridge, which they did after fierce fighting. And Béla felt something dangerous: confidence. He had pushed the Mongols back. He had secured the river crossing. He retired to his fortified wagon camp and on the night of April 10th slept. But imagine what was happening in the darkness. Subutai himself, with a significant portion of the Mongol army, was moving south, silently, through marshland that military wisdom said was impassable. He was building a second crossing, a pontoon bridge several miles downstream, completely out of sight. While Béla guarded the front door, Subutai was walking through the wall. And Badu Khan, he was doing something else entirely. Something that required the cold courage of a man who understood that sometimes, to spring a trap, you have to let yourself appear to fail. At dawn on April 11th, Badu attacked the bridge with his main force. Loudly, visibly, with catapults hurling stone and fire, a weapon the Europeans had not expected the Mongols to carry. The Hungarians held. They pushed back again. The Mongols began to retreat. Do you see it? Do you see what was happening? The retreat was not a defeat. It was a lure. The entire visible Mongol army falling back across the bridge, it looked like a rout. And every instinct in every European knight screamed, pursue them. But the Mongols had a rule: never pursue a retreating enemy unless you know exactly where they're leading you. The Hungarians had no such rule. Béla's commanders surged forward. The entire Hungarian army began to flow out of the wagon camp, across the bridge, chasing what they believed was a fleeing enemy. Thousands of knights thundering forward, banners snapping in the morning air, the thunder of hooves shaking the riverbank. And then Subutai closed the second jaw of the trap. His forces, fresh and unhurried from their overnight crossing downstream, struck the Hungarian flank. The blow was sudden, total. The Hungarians, strung out in pursuit, found themselves attacked from a direction that should have been impossible, from across a river they thought they controlled. Boom, the Mongol catapults opened up. The Hungarians had never heard field artillery used this way, at this range, with this precision. Horses screamed and broke. The advance guard, suddenly under fire from front and flank, lost cohesion. But then the Hungarians rallied. These were not conscripts. They were trained warriors, and they turned to fight. For 2 brutal hours, the battle hung in genuine uncertainty. The Mongol encirclement was not yet complete. If enough knights could break through, if Béla could organize a fighting retreat to his camp, there was still a chance. Badu saw this. He sent a message to Subutai, "Where are you?" The response, according to some accounts, was characteristically cold. "I am where I said I would be. Hold them." The Mongols did something extraordinary then. Subutai deliberately left a gap in the encirclement, a clear corridor to the south and west through the marsh. The Hungarians saw it. Of course they did. And they ran for it, abandoning their camp, abandoning their supplies, abandoning their wounded. Thousands of men flooding through the gap, believing they had found an escape. They had found a killing field. The marsh slowed them. The weight of their armor dragged them down. And the Mongols, mounted, light, knowing every inch of the terrain, pursued at will. What followed was less a battle and more a hunt that lasted 3 days. Béla himself escaped, barely, pursued all the way to the Adriatic coast. His army did not escape. Hungarian knights, priests, camp followers, cut down for 50 miles in every direction. In the dust and blood of those 3 days, Europe lost something it would not recover for a generation. And then something no one expected happened. The Mongols stopped. They had won the most decisive military victory in European history. The road to Vienna was open. The road to Paris was open. There was no army between them and the Atlantic. Western Europe, fractious, stunned, politically paralyzed, was there for the taking. But in December 1241, Urgidei Khan, the great Khan of the Mongol Empire and son of Genghis, died in his capital of Karakorum. Badu Khan had a different war to fight now, the war for succession. The Kurultai, the great assembly that would determine the next ruler of the empire, required every prince to return. Europe had been saved not by its own strength, not by military genius or divine intervention, but by a death thousands of miles away. A death the Mongols themselves had not anticipated. A death that closed the gap just as the killing blow was being raised. The Mongols withdrew. They never came back, and Europe, shaken to its foundations, had no idea how close it had come to being erased entirely. The immediate aftermath of Mohi was catastrophic. Historians estimate that Hungary lost roughly half its population to the Mongol campaign through direct killing, famine, and displacement. Entire regions were depopulated. Cities were ash. Béla IV, who would spend the rest of his reign desperately rebuilding his shattered kingdom, earned the grim title second founder of Hungary. He built stone castles. He reformed his cavalry. He vowed that the disaster would never be repeated. It wasn't. The Mongols never came back. The death of Urgide triggered political turbulence that occupied the empire for decades, and the later Western campaigns, under different khans, never reached this far again. Mohi marked the absolute westernmost point of Mongol conquest in Europe. But consider what came within inches of not being true. If Urgide had lived another 2 years, if Batu had completed the campaign before the news reached him, if the Mongols had taken Vienna, then Paris, then London, ask yourself, what is Western Europe without the kingdoms that grew from its medieval foundation? What is the Renaissance without Italy? What is the Reformation without Germany? What is modern democracy without the slow evolution of European political thought through the centuries that followed? The butterfly's wings beat at Mohi, and the wind changed. The final lesson of the Battle of Mohi is not about weapons or numbers. Subutai's genius was not superior horsemen, although the Mongols had those. It was not better technology, although the catapults helped. It was information. Subutai knew his enemy. He understood Béla's psychology, his political situation, his tactical assumptions. He built a plan that made the enemy's greatest strength, the impulse to pursue a retreating foe, into the mechanism of their own destruction. In war, as Subutai proved, the most dangerous weapon is knowing exactly what your enemy will do next. If you found this fascinating, smash that subscribe button. We dive deep into history's most underrated battles every week. And next time, we'll ask a question that haunted European kings for a century after Mohi. Could the Mongols actually have been stopped? One military theorist made a radical argument about what could have saved Hungary, and the answer will surprise you.